Hey you, it's Jamie here, welcome back to my channel. Now this is quite a weird story to tell. I tell it in, I guess, much more detail on my podcast. If you want to check that out, do click the link in the description below. But I'm going to briefly talk about what I learned from freaking out on the motorway and maybe sort of having a little panic attack. Let's get into it. My brother has just welcomed into the world this wonderful, wonderful new little puppy called Freddie. I'm going to show some pictures, I guess, or any video that I've got right here. But Freddie is an absolute legend, and I love animals. I love my dearly departed Felix, who left me in October. I love my little family dog Titch and all the other animals that I might come into contact with. And so I was desperate to go home and see him. Now, something prevented me going home the week that they first got him, but I don't remember, so that's irrelevant. And then it was just sort of the cherry on top to a really bad week. So, you know, we were fresh off releasing my first podcast back and my first video back, and then this happened. Now, this is only a picture because I was distraught when I woke up that morning and realised that my laptop was broken. And, you know, doing what I do for a job, all of my work happens on this computer. All of my ways to make videos, to speak to you guys, and to, again, pay my bills, that happens right here on this computer, and it wasn't working. So I had to make an emergency Genius Bar appointment. I took it into the Apple shop and they said, that'll be £700, please. So £700 later, unable to work really. You know, I do have an iPad, which I was able to write articles to at a point, but just wasn't working for me. It just wasn't working. It was so difficult because I write about quite difficult subjects sometimes, and I need to research them, and I need to do background research, and usually I'm writing from like legal documents and all that sort of stuff, all this crazy information that I need to sort of pass down into about 300 words, and I couldn't do it on the iPad. I mean, iPads are great, but I don't think they're anything like a MacBook Pro. And if you're a bit weird like me, you've got a sort of working setup that works for you. And if you can't do it that way, then you can't work at all. So that week I didn't work, unfortunately. That week I had to take the whole week off, so I didn't make any money that week. In fact, I was minus £700, which was the first blow. Then, I don't know, towards the end of the week, I felt a bit sorry for myself, and I maybe wasn't eating the right way. My blood sugar wasn't very stable. All through the week. I mean, in my last video here on my channel, you'll be able to see just how unstable my blood sugar has been lately. But anyway, I was still excited to go home and meet little Freddie. But I don't know, that day, that Saturday, when I was driving home, I just couldn't get my blood sugar to play ball. Now, I live just outside of Bristol. My family, so my brothers and my mum and dad, they are all in Staffordshire, in North Staffordshire, a place called Newcastle-under-Lyme, but not the Newcastle that's, you know, Geordie Newcastle. I don't know, I've tried to do an accent. Why, man, that one, not that place. Anyway, so they live in Newcastle-under-Lyme, and that's about, I don't know, I think it's about, I think I got the distance wrong on my podcast. I think I said it's about 230 something miles, but I think it's about 130 something miles because I've recently driven there, and I seem to remember that was what my sat nav was saying. Anyway, so it's quite a far distance, which works out to be about 2.5 hours in the car, if not longer, if there's traffic around Birmingham. You know how the M6 can be if you've ever driven on the M6 in traffic. So it was going to be a long drive, and there was a long drive ahead of me, but as soon as I got into the car, well, not as soon as, I made it about north of Gloucester, so I was about 45 minutes to an hour into the drive, and my phone starts bleeping and telling me that I've got low blood sugar. So I'm like, oh crap, it's, I can't test while I'm driving because I test with my phone or I test with a finger prick and both my hands are on the wheel. So I'm luckily by a service station. I think it was called Michael Wood service station, I can't be sure. Anyway, I pull in, I down a big old Red Bull, and then I eat a big old flapjack too. So I wait the right amount of time for my blood sugar to rise back up, and you know, it's going quite high at this point, so I'm thinking, it's fine, it's fine. I'm gonna be okay, and I'm gonna be able to drive all the way. But I don't know, when I was driving again, I just had the feeling like my blood sugar was gonna fall again. And in fact, you know, it probably was. You know, I stopped. When I eventually stopped, it was, you know, getting quite low. I was on the verge of a hypo again. So I'd obviously had way too much insulin at some point in the previous hours before. You know, it's not even like I was driving on an empty stomach. I'd had a McDonald's breakfast that morning. But when I was there on the motorway, I started to think, God, if I can't keep my blood sugar up, if I feel like it's dropping, then, you know, I could potentially get into a bit of trouble here. I could lose my license, which would have massive implications on the life that I like to live. You know, it would be very difficult to drive home and see my parents and this brand new doggy called Freddie. And, you know, I then started to think about other things that could happen, like a potential accident and losing my license, and if I was in an accident, was I going to hurt someone else? And all of these thoughts were just like racing round in my head, so much so that I think I probably started to have a little bit of a panic attack. Now, I've never really had one of them before. I mean, the only time that I could imagine that I've probably maybe had one is when I ran a half marathon in Swansea with no training, and at the end of the half marathon I couldn't breathe a little bit, but I was probably just exhausted. But I mean, I've heard people talk about panic attacks. That may have been one of them, but this one felt more like it. So I was freaking out on the motorway. All these thoughts were racing around in my head, and I was just like, I just can't concentrate on driving. There was still at least an hour and a half of motorway ahead of me, and I was on a stretch of motorway where there was no places to pull over. There was a hard shoulder, but you know, if I'm freaking out, I don't want to be stuck on a hard shoulder and not be able to get off. So I was just waiting. I was just waiting for a service station or a junction anywhere that I could get off the motorway. And in that time, I rang my dad and I said, listen, my blood sugar is just being a bit funky today. I don't think I'm going to make it home. I don't feel safe to drive right now, so I'm going to turn round. You know, I was all right to drive then, but I was just worried about what was going to happen in the future. I didn't feel like it would be safe for me to continue driving all that way home, you know, and I was quite proud of that decision. I was quite happy that I felt like I did the right thing afterwards. Obviously, you know, my family were upset that I didn't get home to see Freddie. They hadn't seen me since, I think, Christmas, and you know, I was gutted a little bit too. But nevertheless, when I got home and ate a huge bowl of pasta, I just settled down and I was like, yeah, that was the right decision. That was the good thing to do. Obviously, before I made the journey back, which was, you know, quite a way, I did stop off. I pulled off and I pulled over and I just ate whatever I had to hand in my car. Tested my blood sugar, I was fine, but obviously I was worried about it potentially dropping again. So I just waited just to see what was going to happen. Then I continued home, got home, had a big bowl of pasta, and I settled down and I was like, yeah, that's the right thing to do. I had a call with my mum. I think she was just wanting to make sure that I was okay and wasn't being, you know, kidnapped or anything like that. I think she just wanted to suss me out. And she said, yeah, I think you've done the right thing. So there we go. I mean, I have never had a problem with diabetes getting in the way of anything before, but this was my first experience. And it was honestly like the first time that diabetes has had me cancel like a plan that I was so looking forward to. Usually I'd just sort of like, you know, driving aside, muscle through and get on with it. But I just had to listen to my body and what was going on in my head. And that seemed like the right thing to do at the time. And, you know, in the week, a few days later, I did manage to get home and see Freddie, and he is just fantastic. Sorry, card got full. Don't know where I got to, but in any case, I got to see Fred. Fred was great. I went home a couple of days later, and it was fine. It was just fine. I wasn't scared to get back on the motorway. You know, I knew that I'd had a few better days of blood sugar management, so, you know, ultimately I knew I'd be fine. But yeah, it was just a bit of a weird experience. I thought I'd share it. Again, if you wanted to hear a bit more about it, I do talk about it on my podcast, the description. The link will be in the description box below, so do check that out. But that's all from me for today. Have you ever had an experience like that? Do let me know in the comments box below. Do make sure you're subscribed and give this video a like, only if you liked it though. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.